Let's go.
So today might be a good idea for me to talk about what it was like being in a long distance relationship. So I think we all know that when you're in a long distance relationship, you would really like it to be not long distance at some point, but sometimes that's not always the case. Like if you have a spouse that's in the military, or if you're dating someone who has to be sent away on travel for their job a lot. So I was dating someone when I was living in the Seattle area and they lived in Portland. Now, really that's only about a 2 to 3 hour drive away. So not like a cross country overseas thing, but still it involved a lot of travel back and forth to spend time with the person I love. This is why it can definitely seem like you're constantly living out of your suitcase, living out of a backpack, because you're always going back and forth. So for me, I was always traveling in my car, driving to Seattle for my job, and then driving to Portland for the person I was dating, and then back and forth. It really did seem like I was the one doing most of the traveling. Very rarely did that person ever come up from Portland to Seattle to see me. And that did become an issue, as you can imagine, because I'm not with that person anymore. But during the time period that I was dating the person, I would at least say that I met this person. We were both from the same city, and we were just acquaintances. And then over time, we moved on with our lives. I ended up in Seattle. They ended up in Portland. We had some contact here and there. And then eventually it grew into something more than a friendship. So that's the love story part of the story. But the travel part just seemed to be this extra burden. At least it was for me, because I was always having to drive, and that I felt like I was the one always having to put the gas in the car to do the driving. They weren't offering to pay for my gas for my travels. So that's, I guess, part of the issue. So like I said, that I think long term, if you've ever been in a long distance relationship, you usually hope someday it will not be long distance, that the two of you will end up living in the same city, maybe eventually living in the same home if you get married, or take that relationship to the next level. That is something we definitely discussed because of each of our career paths. I had a job that I wasn't willing to give up, and they also had a really good job in the city that they lived in. So neither one of us could really relocate at the time. Probably some of the very first long distance relationships most of us experienced is maybe like you had a high school sweetheart, and then eventually you ended up moving away, going to college, and people drift apart, right? Or maybe you date someone in college, and then what ends up happening is that you're going to eventually move back to your hometown once you graduate. So these are probably some of the first experiences that you've had dating long distance. I would say long distance relationships do not work for me. And right now, it is the holidays. And that's one of those things that makes me think, say you work for a company, they have a big holiday party. Typically when you have the company holiday party, you're expected to bring a date. It can be a real letdown if the person that you're dating can't be there for you. Especially, it's Christmas, it's New Year's Eve, everybody goes out on New Year's Eve, watches fireworks, you have that New Year's Eve kiss. And so if you're someone that is just all alone, knowing that the person that you are dating is somewhere else, you watch all the other couples together kissing at New Year's, and you're just sitting by yourself, and it's not really much fun. And then you start to think, like, what are the benefits of this relationship? I never even get to see the person. Maybe we talk on the phone, but I feel like I'm someone who really needs to spend time with someone one-on-one in person to feel like I'm in a true relationship. So this was something that occurred in my life. I moved to Seattle in 2016. This long distance relationship took place in 2018. Eventually, I have to say I ended the relationship, but eventually the relationship ended. It really started to not go well after a couple of different incidences, and you might think, well, is that, did you just not get along because you didn't get along, or did you not get along because it was long distance? And I think it had a lot to do with, there were some plans being made, and if usually somebody says, hey, do you want to go see a movie, right? I'm just using that as an example. It's not like you just swing by their house and go see a movie. No, it's like you've got to plan ahead this whole 2 to 3 hour trip. You've got to bring extra clothes because you're going to be staying overnight or the weekend or whatever, because it's going to be another 2 or 3 hour drive back. So just making plans is kind of like imperative, at least for me. There are times when I kind of do things on the fly, spur of the moment, But something like that is like, it's a major disruption to my life to have to constantly get my car and travel these long distances to see someone. And so a lot of times we would make plans and then they would back out at the last minute. And that's fine, you know, if someone says like, hey, I have to work, or hey, I'm not feeling well, I'm sick, I can't hang out, I get that. But there was an incident where they told me they were sick, they were going to cancel plans. I'd already started driving down there, and so I was like, okay, I understand, I'm sorry you're sick, let me know how you're feeling later. Well, then later, I guess that evening, they ended up going out with a bunch of their friends, going to a bar, drinking and hanging out all night. And it's like, so you canceled plans with me because you were sick, but yeah, you still managed to go drinks with all your friends and party all night. So, you know, that's one of those red flags where you're like, something doesn't add up. I was like, I'm willing to be forgiving to a point, but, you know, I'm not stupid. You know, I don't like getting played. So, of course, some disagreements ensued. And, yeah, eventually the relationship just didn't work out. If we were ever going to end up moving in together, living together, looking for a new job in that city and living there so that the relationship could grow over time, I really didn't see making that kind of a commitment to someone who would lie about being sick and then go hang out with their friends all night. But that's just me. As far as long distance relationships, living out of car, living out of a suitcase, living out of a backpack, driving back and forth. I mean, yeah, I spent a lot of time stopping at a lot of rest stops to take a break and rest from all that travel. There's times when, you know, here in Washington, it snows, obviously, so it's not safe to really be driving in the snow. There's fog, you can't even see on the road, so it's just unsafe driving conditions. So, you know, there's just a point where you're like, this is kind of like too much trouble. I'm especially not going to go to all this trouble to someone who broke plans with me and lied about being sick. I mean, I'm sure there's more that played into it than that, but that was probably like what really set it off.
Thank you for watching this video.